introduced to polyamory?
The first time I was introduced to polyamory, I guess, yeah, Jace, you and I were realizing like we wanted our relationship to take a different shape. We didn't know exactly what that meant, but you had read the book Stranger in a Strange Land many years prior to that and talked about how profound that was for you, and that you had been thinking about different ways in which to love, ways that weren't so possessive and so much about, you know, only loving one person or only sleeping with one person for the rest of your life and what that exactly meant for you. And it was really difficult for me at first. But there was something always that I kind of got about it that I wanted to explore further. And so finally we did start to take that plunge, and Dedeker entered our lives later on. And yeah, it's been interesting and amazing ever since.
For me, I mean, the first, I guess to again distinguish between when I was formally introduced to the concept of polyamory versus when I first felt capable of it, they're kind of two different points in my history. When I was quite young, when I was first entering high school and when I was first exploring, what adult relationships could be like, the first time that I ever, I was in a monogamous relationship and then realized that I was still attracted to other people and even was developing crushes on other people. And at that point in my life, like nothing had prepared me for that, because literally every single message that I'd gotten from going to church and from Disney movies was that if you're actually in love with someone, then you don't see anybody else and you don't want to be with anybody else and you're not attracted to anybody else. And so for pretty much my entire, all of my teenage years, I thought that there was something wrong with me. The fact that I was attracted to other people, even if I was happy in a relationship, or the fact that I would start falling in love with other people, even when I was happy in a relationship, like, I took that as a sign that, oh, something's wrong with me. Like, I'm broken, or I'm messed up in some way, or I'm incapable of having a relationship. And it wasn't until many, 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 many years later, that narrative about myself started to change. Yeah, I think that, I was in a relationship in my early 20s and, I had these thoughts of like wondering what an open relationship might be like. And I started Googling open relationships because I had no idea what that was even about. And that's how I kind of came across this term polyamory. And that was the first time that I got exposed to people who identified as polyamorous, who were happy and loved each other and were in these viable, like long-term, stable relationships. And it really just blew my mind. I had no idea that people were living this way and that they were happy and that they were committed to each other, that it wasn't just a sex thing, that it wasn't just a casual relationship thing, that people were doing this. And after that point, I just got really voracious in consuming all the books and all the media and all the blogs and everything that I could possibly consume to educate myself about it. So that was the beginning of my journey. And since then, my relationships have taken many different forms and many different shapes. And I've continued to learn what it is that I like and what it is that I don't like. And with each relationship, I've definitely gotten closer to understanding, like, what is it that makes me happy? But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's always been some form of non-monogamy or polyamory. There hasn't yet been a point where I thought, like, well, this sucks, I'm going to go back to monogamy. For me, learning about polyamory formally was definitely a huge turning point in my life where nothing could go back to the way that it was before.
Yeah, and for me, it was, as I said before, I had experienced some, consensual non-monogamy before, which essentially just meant, either giving each other permission to go sleep with somebody else occasionally, or, it was kind of only sex things, or maybe having a threesome once or twice, but still in a monogamous relationship. And that, for me, was kind of this intro to seeing, like, hey, this doesn't make me love this partner any less. It doesn't make me less attracted to them. And that relationship ultimately didn't work out for other reasons. But many years later, I was actually talking to a female friend of mine who I had dated before, and then we had just become friends. And I said to her, what I wish was possible was to be able to have multiple emotional relationships with people and to not, have to have there be this inherent jealousy with them, or that because I liked someone else meant I liked one of them less. And I basically described parts of what polyamory is, even without knowing it. So then years later, in my relationship with Emily, when we said, well, let's try an open relationship, because that's all we'd really heard of. And then we started learning about polyamory and seeing, oh wow, not only is this actually a thing it's possible to do, but there are people who are doing it, and people who've spent a lot of time really thinking about and looking at how to do this well. That it's not just like, oh, people who want to be polyamorous, it's just easy for them all the time, but there actually are, things to learn, just like there are things to learn about how to have better monogamous relationships or better friendships or relationships of any kind.
So what's our next question here? Our next question is, what do you most like about being poly?
I mean, there's so many things to like. But hey, I'll touch back on one of the things that I said before, which is that sense of autonomy. I felt often in my monogamous relationships like I kind of got lost in them, that I was sort of compartmentalizing myself and like putting myself in this box of what I believed my partner wanted me to be. Not necessarily what they did want me to be, but just what I thought they wanted me to be. And that sort of stunted my growth as a human being over time. And being polyamorous allowed me to have all of these great connections with so many different types of people, and allowed like my growth as a human being to continue in a way that I'd never had felt before with anyone or with any type of relationship structure. And that was really profound for me at the time, and continues in various forms and ways to be profound for me in my life. And definitely, as I've moved, like, currently more into, back into, like, a monogamish or sort of open, sort of thinking about being open, but not necessarily, like, actively seeking out partners, I've still been able to maintain some of those lessons when I was, like, very actively polyamorous in my current dating life.
I think my favorite part about it is the idea that every relationship gets to be shaped individually by the people who are in it. That it's not just, oh, we're in a relationship, so that means we have to be moving toward this next step, which is being exclusive, and then it has to go to the next step of becoming boyfriend and girlfriend, or moving in, or getting married, and then having kids, and that there's kind of this sense of, if you're not getting to the next step, then you need to leave and go find someone else, because if you found the right one, if you found your life's purpose, you're going to want to do all these steps. And that's often what I did, and, went through various monogamous relationships. But for me, in polyamory, I like that every relationship can look different, can have different parts to it, and is something that the two of us in that relationship are consciously and intentionally talking about and making a relationship that's how we want it to be, and that can change in the ways that we want it to change, rather than thinking it has to do these certain steps in order to be valid.
I mean, there's so many pieces to it for me, but I know something that I often come back to is having a sense of tribe a little bit. And what I mean by that is some of my happiest memories are, gatherings or parties that I've been to where, I have a partner at that party who also has his other partner at that party. And she also has her other partner who's come to the party. And then I have another partner, and then he's also brought his other partner. And also maybe I have an ex-partner of mine who came, but we're still friends, but then he brought his new partner. And basically this idea that we're all connected in this way, and we're all able to just be kind to each other and to love each other and to... I don't really know what I'm trying to say. It's just this sense of like that. I think it builds off of what Jace was saying, that like these relationships are built the way that they're organically meant to be built, and it's kind of outside of what the status quo is and outside of what what social expectations are. And so that means that we can make them to be whatever we want them to be. So that means as in, I can get along with my ex